Lucas, welcome at last. We've been at it for how long? 3 weeks now, trying to get this interview.
Yeah.
That's
Well, good things come to those who wait, right?
yeah, and those who go through medical procedures, so they have to recover and then feel a lot better about it.
Yeah.
So
I mean, health always comes first.
I agree,
Absolutely.
definitely. But anyway, how are you doing? Firstly, where are you? Because you are one of the very, very few lucky people who live in my time zone or very
Yeah.
close.
That's great, actually. I've been in a couple of interviews over the last weeks, and it's always like a puzzle trying to figure out what time are they talking about. And with this interview, it's really simple. So I'm in Sweden, in Eskilstuna. It's a small city outside of Stockholm.
How cold is it there now?
It's not too bad yet. It's about 10 degrees Celsius in the
Okay.
evenings. If it's sun, it's all right. But
Oh,
we're heading into winter, so
yeah, that's
yeah.
yeah. Literally, winter is coming. So,
Uh,
okay, but you're here because you are one of the minds behind a really cool company called Black Fisk Publishing. I know Black Fisk because of a very cool Viking game that you produced with Amos a little while ago. How's Amos, by the way?
Amos doing great from what I hear. We don't really live in the same city, but we
Oh,
keep
okay.
each other posted. And I was playing with them a couple of games at a convention beginning of summer, and had a lot of fun with a couple of new games that they were working on. So yeah.
Awesome. But you are, I mean, you are the person behind Blackfist. You are kind of the driving force within the company.
Well, Peter and I are, and Peter was one of the co-designers of Blood Feud, and yeah, so it's the two of us mainly doing all the publishing stuff, all the boring administration, things like that.
I'm very curious about something because I'm a massive fan of indie games because indie games are the games that bring the new ideas. Uh, most of them, most of the time. And one of the things that's become very clear over the last few years is that there is a massive outburst of truly unique ideas and originality coming from Sweden. I would say, considering how many games we see out of your country, the percentage of stellar content is way higher than pretty much any other country in the world. Why?
I wish I knew the answer. I probably could make a living touring, teaching other people about that. But I think like it's been the same music wise in a lot of ways. Like Sweden has for the longest time been a powerhouse with at least in the pop music industry, but also like in the metal industry. And I think it, it's it could be the same thing. Like our government is subsidizing and helping out. My day job is actually working for a nonprofit organization financed by the government to help people uh, learn more about their hobbies and evolve within their interests. And my main focus is role playing games and other like nerd stuff like
That
that.
sounds
So, so
amazing.
so my day job is like finding spaces and getting people together and arranging like leadership courses for people who wants to be organize stuff within those spaces and I think that's one part of why a lot of people are getting in contact with both music and role playing games, and I think it could be contributing to people feeling inspired and safe enough to explore, also creating stuff.
Mhm. You know, a friend of mine once gave me a very bizarre but plausible, perhaps, uh, explanation as to listeners, if you've been hearing some sounds, is this that's my dog playing with an antler, which is going to stay there so he doesn't bother me anymore. Go away. I just love him too much. So anyway, but Frank gave me an explanation, which I don't know how plausible it is or if it's just complete rubbish. And I said, well, the Northern Europeans are so good at music because they go to learn music, and then winters come and they can't go anywhere. They said they have to stay at home. So what are they going to do? They're going to practice all the time, and that's why they become so good at music. And I thought, I think we have a perception of their winters that I don't think it's going to be that realistic if you ask one of them. So can you please break the myth for me? Is that true?
So before I got really invested into in creating tabletop role playing games, I was really invested in making music, and I was playing in a band, and we pretty much lived in our rehearsal space. So we were there all day long, all night long, every day of the week. Uh, I, and it was really cold as well. Like it was a unheated part, like with a really thin roof. So we were playing with our jackets and hats and scarves on, and we still kept at it every day. So I think could be something to that. But also, like the rehearsal space was free for us because of the same organization that I'm now working for, helping people have spaces, and they even helped us out getting instruments and things like that. So I think like getting started in Sweden and like doing it at a hobby level is so easy. Uh, but perhaps the winters, like it's pitch black outside now, so you can't really stay out late. So probably a lot of people are staying indoors, writing
Okay.
music and games, perhaps.
Okay, fair enough. It's then it was a good theory. Fine, that sounds
Yeah.
good. Okay, so let's go back. Nonsense aside, let's go back to your company and what you're doing, because you have right now today still 7 days to go, and you have a crowdfunding project to do Heroes of Cerulea that looks hyper 8-bit cute. It just looks absolutely fantastic. Tell me about it. How did this idea come from? Because there's a massive departure from Blood Feud to Heroes of Cerulean. This is completely different. How did that come about?
First of all, thank you. And yeah, it is a big departure from Blood Feud, but I think like they spring from the same well, I guess. In a sense, you have an idea for something. In both cases, you have an idea for something that you would be interested in exploring more, and you sort of start designing a game around it and try to focus all the aspects on somehow providing that gaming experience and developing a system specifically for that gaming system, as opposed to just taking one of the existing big systems and just applying new themes to that. So Heroes of Cerulea started out. I was reading fan-made Legend of Zelda tabletop RPG, and there was just something about it that wasn't for me. No, no ill will towards the game. It was just didn't capture what I personally felt a Zelda tabletop RPG should be.
Mm-hmm.
So I started asking myself, what would my personal Zelda tabletop RPG look like? And I started exploring it and turned into a game that I felt sort of happy about. So we play tested it and had a lot of fun, and it really felt like a gaming, like a mix of an old video game and a tabletop role playing game. So we felt like it was worth exploring further. And then once we started thinking about like what's the identity of this game, and we started leaning more and more into the video game aspects, and things started falling into place. We're discussing what kind of illustrations should we have, and then yeah, we should probably do pixel art. It doesn't make sense to have pixels in a printed medium, but for this game, it's sort of fun, and like more importantly, it captures the tone and the the feel that we want to convey in the game in an effective way. So, so yeah, it started out as just a fun experiment, something that I was interested in playing myself, and then we had fun with it. So we thought we'd share it with more people.
Okay, so how big is the departure from Zelda? What is Cerulea like?
It's honestly, it's just a big ripoff of Zelda in so
Okay.
many ways. It's, I mean, I studied in college a bit of copyright law, and I've been using that to the fullest now, trying to avoid the
Any
the
pitfalls?
Nintendo lawsuit. Yeah, yeah, but the idea is there is no official Zelda tabletop role playing game, and perhaps there never will be. But we figured that I wanted to capture as much of that experience as possible, so that people could play Zelda without there actually being a unofficial game.
So what in that case? Okay, let's delve a little bit more into it because I'm very interested in design with a purpose. I like the idea that you wanted to recreate an experience. What experience is that for you? How would you describe it?
Yeah, I think like in a one of the main ideas that really captured me at least was the idea of video game logic within tabletop role playing games, because most tabletop role playing games exist in sort of a realistic world,
Mhm.
like our own in a lot of ways. But video games aren't realistic. A lot of them, especially the older ones. Like if you play a Super Mario game, like
Yeah.
it doesn't make sense. You jump on stuff and you eat poisonous mushrooms and grow, and like it doesn't make sense, but it makes sense in that world.
Mhm.
And the same with the older Zelda games. Like pick up a key, and that key can unlock any door within the dungeon. But once you use it, it disappears. And I don't know about you, but I've never had a key like that in real life. But in the video game, you don't really question it. And it like also like the dungeons are pretty much designed for a hero to come in from the outside, go through the rooms, find a bunch of different stuff, solve puzzles, find an item that the boss inside the dungeon is especially vulnerable to, and like if the monsters and the boss really wanted to keep people out, they probably wouldn't have put up puzzles and items and put keys in pots and things like that. But in a video game, it makes sense because you're supposed to solve the dungeon and
Mm.
you're supposed to be a hero that comes in from the outside. And also, like NPCs not really having normal conversations. They just have one thing they want to talk about, and if you try to ask them about something else, they just keep talking about the same thing that they started to talk about. And I think all those things, it's a really peculiar role playing experience. It's not like any other role playing game in that sense, because you have the video game logic, and that affects how you experience the game in a lot of ways. And it opens up for fun opportunities that you probably couldn't have in another more realistic role playing game.
So how have you translated this into a tabletop experience then that will make sense to people playing it around it? Because I can imagine if somebody finds an NPC that can only tell you about these spectacles that my uncle used to
Right,
use,
right.
this is going to be like, wait, I'm just trying to ask for directions to the nearest thing. Why are you talking to me about these
Right.
glasses? How does that work?
I think a lot of it has to do with setting expectations. Like if you think you're playing a regular role playing game, you're going to be confused and perhaps even a bit frustrated. But if you pick up a game that looks like an old video game,
Mhm.
like even the cover sort of looks like an NHS cassette, and then there's pixel art and you have a bunch of rules talking about like the limitations of the video game and things like that. You're sort of getting in the mindset of playing a video game as opposed to a role playing game. So I play tested it with a bunch of seasoned role players, and all of them has sort of immediately just gone into video game mode and
Okay.
just accepted everything about the world. And I mean, there were other stuff like getting you in that mindset. Like instead of HP, you have hearts that deplete, and you can pick up hearts to refill those heart containers. Uh, like everyone play tested it with knows that if you smash a pot, you might find stuff inside it. So I think people enter it with a different mindset once they know it's like a video gamey sort of role playing game. There's pixel art and everything, so they've already calibrated to the correct mindset, I think. And then I've tried to capture more of it, like in the game design. Like there's no XP or levels. You
Mhm.
just find new items that sort of give you new special abilities. You can solve puzzles in different ways. There's uh, there's like the, the puzzles are like I said, they don't really make sense to have been built that way, but they make sense in the dungeon context. So once if you start questioning it, you're not gonna question it so early
Mhm.
that you might, yeah, you're gonna have a conversation about it rather than just being frustrated the entire game, I think.
Okay.
And like you have on your character sheet you have the hearts, but you also have uh, like notes for noting how many keys you
Mhm.
currently have and things like that. So and also like the resolution mechanic and the combat system is more akin to a real time Zelda
Mhm.
game. Like you're not really waiting for taking turns with the opponent. Everything's happening pretty much at the same time, and you might lose a heart while you're attacking someone pretty much because you just run into them or they attack you at the same time. So I think I've done my best to design a core rule set that sort of emulates the old video Zelda video games as well.
Which is a good segue because I was going to ask you what was the rule system like? How does it play?
So yeah, you have like only three stats. It's pretty traditional in a lot of ways. You have three stats, which are might, bravery, and insight,
Mhm.
and then you roll pools of four-sided dice. Um, so like if you're doing an action that might use strength, then you pick up as many d4s as you have in strength, you roll them, and then you read the highest of the results. So you might either on a 1 to 2 you fail and you lose a heart, on a 3 you succeed but you still lose a heart, and on a 4 you just succeed. So in that case, if you're fighting a monster on a 3, you're hit by the monster, but you manage to hit the monster.
Okay.
On a 1 to 2, you miss the monster and you're hit by the monster's attack. And on a 4, you evade the monster's attack and you manage to hit the monster while doing so. So it creates more dynamic, more real time, more uh, flowy kind of action system as opposed to the more traditional each side takes turns, make rolls, and then something happens, and you sort of get the idea that it's ironically more akin to a Final Fantasy game. So
Hmm.
a lot of tabletop role playing games, like one side goes first, then the other, and then
Yeah.
you take turns. But this is more real time, and the rules are very minimalistic. Like the first iteration of the rules just fit on one trifold pamphlet.
Mhm.
So we'll try to keep it as minimalistic and lo-fi as possible. so that it's an easy game to just pick up and play.
And yet the combat sounds like it's not a kind of game where you want to get into combat right away because there's an awful lot of chances that you can get hit a
Yeah,
lot.
yeah, and people tend to come up with creative ways to solve combat in other ways than just fighting. So I think that's it's like it's sort of like the OSR games. I've looked at them quite a lot for inspiration, but I'm ended up using a different system for the game. But they have a lot in common with like exploring dungeons,
Mhm.
minimalistic rules, and like solving puzzles, I guess.
Okay. Characters. Tell me about them. What kind of characters can you create in this game?
So first, we started out with sort of a complex character creation system because I'm usually quite into uh, like being invested in a character and portraying them in like in a deeper way. Um, but we sort of noticed that like in a video game, you're not really, at least in the older video games, you're not really picturing yourself as Super Mario or Link or things like that. You're sort of at a distance and you're playing the game more as a player. So we wanted to capture more of that. So like there are tables for randomizing different attributes, but most of them are like different hair colors, different clothing colors, just to separate the characters from each other.
Mhm.
And there are a couple of different kin that you could play to differentiate the characters a bit more, and they're also quite uh, stolen from from the Zelda games. But the main thing that sets characters apart is that they have different items, which will allow them to solve problems or approach problems in different ways. So you're playing as like in the setting there is a like a chosen one
Mhm.
or rather a chosen two that are reborn to fight off evil, and the evil is reborn as well. And now the evil has been reborn. It has returned and it has an army of monsters. He has captured the royal castle and has sent out monsters into dungeons. And the heroes, the chosen ones, haven't been reborn yet. So it's sort of up to everyday adventurers to take on the mantle and like do something about the evil in the world. Uh, while waiting for the chosen ones to return. But who knows if they are going to do that? So you're taking on the mantle as heroes.
I like the sound of that quite a lot. And one of the things that you've mentioned a couple of times, and I really like, is the fact that there isn't, or there doesn't seem to be any kind of traditional leveling up. This is more to do
No,
with getting stronger and more heart, and the items that you find making you more capable of actually doing whatever it is that you have to do. Which I can imagine those items can be interchangeable within the party. So if somebody, no, I could do with that sword, can we swap it? Blah blah.
yeah, but I've noticed that most players they tend to really hold on to their items because
Okay.
it's what make their character special.
Mhm.
So I was thinking that in the beginning, like you could switch items and you can like find optimal ways of solving problems. But in a lot of ways, it's like one person gets the item and that person keeps the item because they sort of identify themselves as the user of that item, which is pretty cool. So I think we lean a bit more into that in the later stages of the design, like the items sort of are the characters in a lot of ways. Since you don't have that many stats or special abilities to go on, you sort of focus the characters around items, which is also a bit of an OSR thing. Like a lot of
Mhm.
OSR character generations, you roll random items and you sort of start to try to figure out what kind of character is this that would carry these items. So I think it's an interesting, at least for me, it's a very different approach to character creations and also like how you play. I'm normally more into uh, yeah, really immersing myself in the characters and having really nuanced characters to portray. So it's a bit of a departure for this project because we felt it more captured the feeling that we were going for with the old school video games.
But that presents another problem, though, which is that if you have to rely on the items for the character to advance in a way that will make them, strong enough or capable enough to defeat some stronger evils. What kind of tools have you provided to people within the game to make sure that they never run out of items? Because you can give them a list, but regardless of how many, if you give them 50 or 100, at some point they're going to run out of items. How can people create their own to make their adventures and Cerulea theirs?
So what I I found as I was creating like the starting list of items, I was having some of them came quite easy and some of them were a bit harder to figure out. But once I started in the other end of thinking about the puzzles and the bosses, like what kind of item would help you with this puzzle, or what kind of item would be effective against this kind of boss, and thinking about it all as one system rather than just thinking about the item. uh, I had a lot of help from that in coming up with the items, and we'll have in the book some guidelines both for creating your own dungeons
Mhm.
and creating your own bosses and your own items, puzzles and things like that. And also, there were quite recently unlocked like a third party license that will allow anyone to just create stuff for the game, put it up on itch, or sell it, or do whatever they want with it. So we're also preparing like an asset pack of map elements, so you can easily make your own maps for the dungeons. And yeah, we're trying to give as many tools as possible for people to actually create their own dungeons, because the main book will come with 4 dungeons
Okay.
as like a small campaign. But the idea is that you can make, that's another big part of what I think uh, attracted me to creating this, is like the idea of as a dungeon master designing your own Zelda
Mhm.
dungeons, which are kind of have their own unique uh, approach to them. So yeah, we'll try to give people as many tools as possible to figure out items and dungeons and things like that.
Because designing Zelda type dungeons, at least of course not at the Zelda level, because they tend to be huge and very contained within a massive world and massive adventure, but it's not an easy fit. I mean, creating those um, puzzles and all those challenges in a way that will make them hard enough that you will find it difficult, but eventually very rewarding to solve them rather than just giving up. Because
Yeah, yeah. I think I've been replaying the older Zelda games lately, and I was surprised to find out that you could like run through them in a day or so.
hmm,
So I think like the newer Zelda games have really complex 3-dimensional dungeons, but we've been looking more at the older dungeons with a little bit simpler puzzles and a little bit uh, smaller dungeons. And I think that's helped out a lot because as a player, you're sort of feeling smart if you're figuring out a puzzle, and it doesn't have to be that hard for you to feel like you've accomplished something.
mhm.
But if there is a really complex puzzle, then you might get stuck on it, and just in the end, everyone just sits there and like bored because they can't figure out the correct solution. But I think that's also a strength of pulling the game into the role playing game area, because in a role playing game you can sort of be a little bit more liberal about how you solve a problem, because in a video game you're really locked into one solution, or the solutions that have been programmed for
Mhm.
you to be able to use. But in a role-playing game, you can have the game master sort of, yeah, that makes sense. You could probably get away with that, or solve the puzzle in that way. So yeah, the play tests, we've been like, a dungeon usually is taking 2 hours or something like that to
Hmm.
play through. So we've been going for a little bit simpler dungeons, just so you can focus on the fun of playing and the fun of solving puzzles, as opposed to just sitting in a circle
Yes.
thinking like, we haven't tried this yet, have we? Yeah, we tried that 2 hours ago. Oh, damn it.
How big is Cerulea? I mean, how much detail did you go into when you decided to, create this world?
We try to keep everything minimalistic about the game, like the way you design dungeons, the rules, how they work, and also Cerulea as a world. There's a small introductory, like, history text, or flavor text about the world, and there are a couple of locations, like famous standard locations in the world. But then the game comes with a map that's 16 by 8 screens. So like, you know, it's sort of like a square crawl, but we call it a screen crawl because
Right.
it's like video game screens. And each of those areas, they're mostly undefined when you get the game, but there's a procedure for figuring out what's in all these areas. So you could either play the game pretty much just going from dungeon to dungeon and playing it that way, or you could explore the overworld of Cerulea, and all the locations and villages, and find new smaller dungeons and things like that. So most of it will have a couple of locations that are described when you get the game, but the idea is that every every dungeon master sort of fills out the world with their own ideas and areas, and we have sort of a simple procedure for doing that. So it can be a big world if you like fill it with stuff, but we try to keep everything minimalistic and open to people creating stuff, as opposed to us just telling everyone, this is here, this is here, this is the game, now just play it. It's more open to adding your own ideas and creating your own Zelda game in a way.
And a bit of a hard question, because I can imagine some people will be wondering whether this is possible. How easy will it be to take the rules and the game ethos and apply it to another world? Like somebody who might have created their own world, or somebody who said, I absolutely love Forgotten Realms and I want to bring this to Forgotten Realms. How easy would that transition be?
I think it might not work at all. I had someone telling me, yeah, I'm thinking about, now that you have a third party license, I'm thinking about doing a Final Fantasy hack of this game using this engine. And I was thinking about it, and I was like, there's so many different things. Like, this is created to be like a Zelda game, and a Zelda game is focused on items and dungeons, puzzles, and things like that, and real time combat. And a Final Fantasy game is more focused on like the epic story,
On the
like
turn-based combat.
character relationships, and turn-based tactical combat, as you were saying. So I think someone smarter than me could probably figure it out. But my immediate instinct is that this is designed on every level to be a Zelda game. So as soon as you try to make something else with it, you're gonna have to change quite a lot for it to make sense. Because if you bring the video game logic into Forgotten Realms, then
That would be
it will be a clash of
hilarious.
ideas.
But that would be hilarious to see. Come on,
Yeah.
I would love somebody to have a go at it and see what it looks like, because that could be
Yeah,
really fun. I think fun
I think
to
so.
see.
And I mean, like the basic core mechanic could probably use for pretty much any game that's of the adventuring kind, I guess. But it's so minimalistic that you could probably figure out your own if you really wanted to. But yeah, it's a good question. I think my immediate answer would be you can't, but I would love to be proven wrong.
That would be really good fun. How big is the book going to be? I mean, what are people going to get?
So you're going to get like an A5 size book of about 80 pages
Mhm.
and like a really short character creation section, a really short rule section, quite a short. Well, the game master chapter is a bit longer because it has all these tools and random tables for you to create stuff. And then there's a ready to play campaign with four slightly smaller standard dungeons and a final dungeon that's a lot larger that sort of acts as the end of the game. And in the book, there are tools for creating your own dungeons. So the idea is that you could maybe look at the three first dungeons and think, yeah, I could probably do better than this and create your own dungeons and make your own campaign and perhaps use the last dungeon as the finale of the campaign or improve it and or make something of your own from scratch.
Mhm.
So it'll be quite a small book, quite
Mhm.
a short book, and a lot of bullet points, not a lot of text. You'll have really cool pixel art illustrations made by Romeo Melin, who also made the illustrations for Blood Feud. She's immensely
Talented.
creative,
Mm.
and she's a real style chameleon. And yeah, she's brilliant. She's helped us with a bunch of games now, and every time we're like, well, could you do it in a completely different style? And she's like, I'll give it a try, and it ends up being better than we could ever imagine. So, so
Okay.
yeah, I think the book will be small but stuffed.
Okay. So I have a hard question to ask, and is that if it's such a small book, I mean, you're a company that's pretty experienced in producing books, why bother going to Kickstarter? I mean, why not just producing in Itch.io or Drive-Thru or whatever and give people a POD option? Why Kickstarter?
Yeah, we started out actually with this game on Kickstarter, like three pamphlets that you could print out, like a rules pamphlet and a game master pamphlet and a dungeon pamphlet. And the reason, like pamphlets are very fun, but they people started asking about like could we add this or can we create more dungeons and can we have more tools to create stuff and so you were left with sort of like if we would translate this into pamphlets you would have 15 pamphlets and it's sort of a hassle to bring to sessions and they get folded and part of it is probably ego as well like it's more fun to have created a book and I think also people tend to like if you have a cool looking book then you're more likely to appreciate the game in a different way or take the time to read through it and maybe try it so I think we could have had it print to play but we probably couldn't have afforded the illustrations and English is not our native tongue so now we're bringing in an editor to help us out with the language. And yeah, I think it's going to be a uh, more fun product. It being a book rather than an itch download.
That's
So
that's 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 a fair point.
partly for my own ego and partly for for the heck of it. I think.
No, I think there's actually very good reasons, and I keep saying a lot of the times, to people, you should just go for it and release your book and do whatever it is that you feel you want to do, because it is always a lot better to look back and think I made a mistake than it is to look back and think, damn it, I should have tried it. So the further you're going, just because you want to satisfy that itch of
Yeah.
being able to look back and say, yeah, I did that. Boom.
Yeah.
I think everybody should do that. Everyone.
I recommend it too. And especially like with you could do print on demand books and things like that. So you don't even have to have a big Kickstarter to do it.
Yeah.
But the thing is, like, if you do it, we've been getting sort of spoiled with doing Kickstarter books because you get like nicer paper quality and you
Mm,
can do cool stuff with the cover and things like that. So I think that's another reason to make it a book. I have a small bookcase of tabletop role playing games, and every now and then I have a day where I'm bored or I have a bit of extra time. I look through it and I pick out a book that I haven't read before or I haven't browsed through in a while. And I think like pamphlets tend to get lost because you
yes.
can't really see them in the bookcase, and the same with scenes in a lot of ways. So I think a nice solid spine of the book is a good thing to be reminded of the game. Like, yeah, right, I own this game. I haven't read that in a while.
Yeah,
So
I think you're absolutely right. I mean, how many different products I have that I never repair on them because literally they have no spine.
yeah,
So I forget.
spineless games.
Yes, that should be a cool name for a company, though. Spineless
Yeah,
Games. I like it. I like that an awful lot.
nice.
Okay, um, the campaign, though, you're doing exceedingly well. I mean, you were asking for $7,000, give or take,
Yeah, something like that.
and it's already about to get to 25,000 euros. That's a lot of money.
Yeah, we're getting a lot of support from helpful people interviewing us and people sharing it on social media and things like that. So, I mean, it's a really niche game, and especially the last game we did was Blood Feud, which is first of all a really different game,
Yeah.
and it's a very niche game as well. So we don't really have that big a following internationally. So it's really like humbling to see people supporting the project. Like I said, it just started out as sort of an experiment for my own sake, and it's really fun to see people vibing with the concept and thinking it could be exciting to play.
Did you ever contemplate the fact that this book could be, funded five, six, perhaps seven times? It could very well be that in the last few days it gets to 30 or 32,000 euros. I wouldn't be surprised at all. Did you ever consider, that this could explode?
I mean, I think all the games we design in our company are pretty much just for ourselves in the beginning, and it's always a surprise when anyone else thinks like this is a cool idea. So yeah, that's really exciting. But like I said, if you're doing a Kickstarter like this, and now we've gotten a lot of support, that's allowing us to make a cooler book. We'll have added a bunch of stuff to that. A lot of people asked for custom dice, so
Mhm.
we were able to add that. And now, yeah, we have like 8-bit music, ambient music tracks that we're going to create for the game as well, getting some help with that. And an adventure like made by an external collaborator called Christian Salén, who did Cyborg. And one of the goals were the upcoming goals that we're hoping to reach is that we're paying everyone more.
Hmm.
Like the illustrator gets a bonus, the editor gets a bonus, uh, and the guest dungeon writer gets a bonus. So that's just. I mean, we're not really making any money of this, but it's nice to let some people make money of being involved in tabletop role playing games.
Which is
So
about it's about time. I think more projects should offer, as as a perk, a few perks I find more attractive than the fact that, my money is going to help make other people's lives a little bit better for a little bit longer.
Yeah.
I think more companies should do that. If we get to this point, we pay double to pretty much anyone around here, and we can, make sure that they're going to be eating for another 3 months and living out of the art for another 3 months. I'd sign up for more games if they did that.
Yeah, I think it's a good concept, and like when you design a small niche game like this, you're always on a budget and you're trying to figure things out, and you haven't really haggled with the creators, but you sort of know that they're not charging the reasonable price for their services when they're creating such brilliant stuff. So they're doing it out of like passion for the hobby,
Hmm.
and it's nice to be able to, in the end, find it in your budget that you could give them more money. It's they deserve it from the beginning, but for niche projects like this, it's sort of hard to pay them what they're actually worth. So Kickstarter is a nice way to be able to do that.
I love hearing how, at last, because I've been complaining about this for a bit now, how people use Kickstarter just because it helps bring money in, not because they actually want to or need it to make the project better. So when I hear this sort of thing, that this is exactly what Kickstarter and crowdfunding was made for, so to make the projects become the best they can be, not just for the projects to become.
Yeah, yeah. I
So
think I think in a lot of ways it's hard nowadays not doing a Kickstarter if you're creating a game, because there's so much marketing attached to just being on Kickstarter, and you can sort of say, soon we're going to be on Kickstarter, and you can say now we're on Kickstarter, and you can say now we're the Kickstarter is finishing up, and you can say now we release the game.
mm,
While if you're not doing a Kickstarter, it's like we're going to release a game. We released a game. Yeah, the game is still out. Maybe you want to check it out. Hello, our game is still out, and it's sort of repetitive. It's not as exciting for people. So I think, like, in order to move away from Kickstarter being a standard for all publishers, pretty much, I think uh, it's an uphill battle in a lot of ways, because they're getting so much marketing from doing a Kickstarter.
this is going to sound really bad, but I was really hoping at one point that Kickstarter would truly put their foot in it with all the NFTs and the cryptocurrencies,
Oh yeah,
because I thought, at last, if people have a reason to leave Kickstarter and take a look at all the platforms, that would be so much better for everyone. So much better, because there are some other platforms out there that do things so much better than Kickstarter, and people completely and flatly refuse to look at them because they are not Kickstarter, and Kickstarter is so easy. That I know it sounds really bad, but I really hoped that the cryptocurrency thing would diversify the crowdfunding market a lot
uh,
better, but it seems to have fizzled out somehow.
yeah. I mean, crypto fizzled out as well, but
Did
yeah, I have a couple of friends who did like a crowdfunding on a different platform, and they usually, like on a Kickstarter, they do pretty well, and they manage to put out their game and everything, and they tried a different platform, and they got like a tenth of the people
True.
that they normally get. So they couldn't actually make the game, and they spent a lot of money marketing it and getting illustrations for it, and in the end, they couldn't even afford to
it?
produce it.
Yeah,
So
it is a very tricky one, because I've used multiple platforms to produce different role-playing games. I've published both in Spain and outside, and I've used Kickstarter. I've used Kickstarter in the US and in the UK. I've used Verkami in Spain. I've used Ulule. I've used Game on Tabletop. I've used Indiegogo just to see what they are like. And it's a shame, because I consider to be Game on Tabletop the best platform out there. Of all the ones I've tried, is by far the best in customer service and all the interface and all the everything. But I reckon if I had published Campo de Mitos in Kickstarter rather than doing it in Game on Tabletop, I got to 250% of my budget, of my target in Game on Tabletop. I reckon I could have gone a lot higher if I went to Kickstarter, and that pains me so much because it's so unfair.
Yeah, it is. It is unfair, and especially with with Kickstarter having some problematic things about them, like with I mean, they figure out the union thing, I guess, but that was a big thing for us that we were really questioning when the Kickstarter refused to their employees to form a union, and yeah, with the whole blockchain crypto thing,
Yeah.
that oh,
As I said, I really hope that at the time, I didn't by any means want Kickstarter to go away completely because, people live out of Kickstarter and they need it. So I didn't want to end those livelihoods. But for people to have enough of a reason to actually try another platform that's not game found either, diversify, find the best platform for your work, and for people, for backers to give another platform a chance. I think that would have been really, really great. But hey ho, maybe in the future, who knows? Yeah. So now that you have, I'm going to predict that you're going to get to the 32,000 euros. Okay, that's my prediction. Which
we'll see what happens. I think it's a reasonable prediction, at least.
I think it will happen. What next? What's going to happen? When are people going to be getting the book?
So the thing is, the day we launched, we got a message from our, or the day we were supposed to launch, like a couple hours before, we got an email from our printer saying, "Oh, just for your information, we've added an energy tax because of the energy crisis or like an energy fee because of the European energy crisis. So in September it's 5%, and it's gonna get higher in the winter, but you won't know what it is until
it's there,
like until it's that month. So our original plan was to release it quite quickly, but then we sort of wanted a bit more space to make a financially reasonable decision. So at the latest, we're gonna have the game. I think we'll probably release a PDF early next year, and then the book will come at summer at the latest, I think, and then we'll have. Like with the third-party license, we'll see if anyone figures out cool stuff to do for it, and we have sort of an idea of creating a more like a collaborative expanded campaign with more dungeons, maybe some like overworld areas or a map that's ready to play. But if I'm going to be the only one doing it, it's going to be such a narrow set of ideas going into that. So we did that for a game that we released in Swedish just before Blood Feud. It's a game that I made about like optimistic, vibrant, colorful adventure fantasy setting. And people started making adventures for that game, and quite a lot of them. So we managed to put together like official books, like of adventures, anthologies made by different creators, and they brought so much creativity and so many ideas that were so much better than mine. And I think that's really exciting when you get a game that others are contributing their ideas to, and is making it a lot more diverse and interesting, I think. So that's my hope, at least for Heroes of Cerulea as well. That people will make a bunch of cool stuff that I had never thought of. Perhaps a Forgotten Realms expansion.
Yeah, I think you should know as a stretch goal, just for kicks, a stretch goal. We'll make a Forgotten Realms version of Cerulea when we reach €1 million. And see if people actually that motivates that. Can you imagine if people went completely bananas with this, and suddenly you find yourself with $1 million, €1 million to develop a Forgotten Run sort of thing for Cerulea. That would be like,
Yeah. Yeah, maybe we'll do that. It's a secret stretch goal.
yeah,
If we reach 1 million, I'll look into it.
yeah, that would be amazing. Okay, what happens with Black Fisk after this? I mean, what have you got in mind?
So we got a couple of stuff. One of them is an English translation of the game I was just talking about. It's going to be called Wind Soul, and it's sort of a non-European fantasy setting. It's inspired by mainly by nature and by optimism and by uh, like a lot of different ideas from all over the world, just to create something different. And it's very optimistic and vibrant, and it's quite traditional in a lot of ways, focused on adventure. And then we have another like dungeon crawly type of game, but it's developed mainly for teachers and librarians and parents to get kids into tabletop role playing games. So it's sort of, yeah, it's developed for beginners in a different way, and for more teaching situations, which I think could be cool and helpful. We got a lot of that in Sweden, like libraries and like youth clubs and things like that, getting into tabletop role playing games. So I think it could be a good tool for them to have something a bit more uh, tailored for them to get started with. And then we had, yeah, way too many projects
Oh well, no, that's good.
lined up. I think that's one of our main features, and perhaps one of our biggest weaknesses is that we get inspired by a bunch of stuff, and then we make really like it's a diverse set of games. So perhaps we'll do something along the lines, more along the lines of Blood Feud, like something. Uh, we've got a bunch of projects that are more collaborative storytelling, like really, yeah, storytelling indie games as opposed to adventure dungeon crawly games as well. So really eclectic and unfocused company in that sense.
Awesome. Well, I very much look forward to seeing and hearing what you're going to be getting, because I absolutely love what Heroes of Cerulea is looking like and is shaping up to be. So that would be great. Lucas, thank you very much indeed for being with me today. It's been, as far as I'm concerned, definitely very well worth the wait just to say hi to you. So thank you so much.
Likewise, thank you so much for having me on. It was great talking to you, and yeah, I'm glad you're on the right direction, doing better.
Thank you. Thank you very much.